Hello students. Today we are going to do the revision of tangible assets, which is IAS 16, property, plant and equipment. So let us start with the basic requirements that we have to know as far as IAS 16 is concerned. And accordingly, we will then shift on to the related provisions like IAS 40 and so on. Then interest on borrowed capital, all those things we will be taking into consideration. So let us start today's session with the IAS 16 and the main points that we are supposed to know. I'm sharing with you. This plan material. So if you can see here, IAS 16 property, plant and equipment. Basically, they are dealing with tangible assets. See, you have IAS 16, IAS 40. What is the difference between IAS 16 and IAS 40? Let us talk about IAS 16 first. They are saying property, plant and equipment. What we have to remember is that this property, plant and equipment is those tangible assets which are required by the business to be used in the business. They are held by the entity for the purpose of being utilized in the business, either to manufacture something or to render a service. Okay. So property, plant and equipment are tangible assets held by an entity for more than one accounting period for use. That means that it is a long-term asset. So when we say more than one accounting period, it means it's a long-term asset. How do you recognize this? Whenever we have done in FR, that is financial reporting, whenever we do any asset or liability, the first thing that we start with is recognition. Will it be recognized? Will it not be recognized? That is the first step. After it is recognized, then we ask the next question. What is the initial measurement cost? After we do with the initial measurement, then we go for subsequent expenditure or subsequent measurement. So like this, we take the process ahead. So starting with the recognition of this particular asset, an item of property, plant and equipment should be recognized as an asset when there are two conditions to be satisfied. In financial reporting, I have always mentioned in the class also that when we are talking about conditions, we have to see whether it is either or whether it is both. It is and. So here the word is and. That means both the conditions have to be satisfied for it to be recognized in the financial statement. That is one of the features of financial reporting, whether it will be recognized or not. So the first condition is that it is probable that future economic benefits associated with the asset will flow to the entity. Future economic benefits associated with the with the asset will flow to the entity. In the sense that whenever we are talking about an asset which is going to be covered under IAS 16, we have to ensure that it is resulting in cash flows, it is resulting in economic benefits, which will be enjoyed by the entity. That is the first condition. Because we are saying that the assets are going to be used by the entity for its own production, for its own rendering of service, for its own business purpose. So the economic benefits should arise to the entity. Second condition which must be satisfied. The second condition which must be satisfied is that the cost of the asset can be measured reliably. In the sense that when we are talking about cost of the asset, it means that at what cost we are going to show the asset in the financial statement. That should be measurable. Okay. And that measure should be reliable. So these are the two conditions that have to be complied with for recognizing an asset under IAS 16 in the books of accounts, right? What is the initial measurement? So as I told you, once we say that, okay, it is going to be recognized, then what is the initial measurement? How do we measure the cost of the asset? How do we arrive at the cost of the asset? Okay. So an item of property, plant and equipment should initially be measured at its cost. Now, what is the cost including? We have to know that cost includes all the costs which are incurred in bringing the asset into working condition. Meaning that whenever I'm talking about cost of the asset, initial cost of the asset, it includes all those expenses which are incurred for bringing the asset up to my factory premises, up to my office premises. That includes transportation charges, import duty, whatever expenses are incurred for bringing the asset up to my factory, up to my premises. Included in this initial cost are capital costs such as cost of site preparation, delivery cost, transportation cost, installation cost, borrowing cost, which we are going to do in detail as per IAS 23. So that the interest on borrowed funds to a certain extent, provided certain conditions are complied with, they are added to the cost of the asset. They are a part and parcel of the cost of the asset. Then we have expenses such as fuel, training, warranty cost, all these items which are not to be shown as cost, which are written off as they are incurred, or I would say that they are expensed to the profit and loss. That means they are debited to profit and loss. So they are not included. Then we have dismantling cost. Now, what about dismantling cost? Just as you incur cost for installation, obviously at the end of the life of the asset, you have to sell the asset. So for selling the asset, whatever you have installed, you have to dismantle. तो उसका भी cost लगेगा. तो cost of dismantling the asset, site restoration cost at the end of the life of the asset. So all these are expenses which are also to be added to the cost of the asset. लेकिन अभी question ये आता है, सवाल ये आता है कि how do these expenses be added to the cost of the asset? Because they are going to be incurred 10 years later, 15 years later, at the end of the life of the project or at the end of the life of the asset. So in that case, whatever is the estimated dismantling cost that is likely to be incurred based on normal circumstances with respect to other companies, what will be that particular cost? We estimate that amount and calculate its present value. So discount the cash flows and calculate the present values. So the present value of dismantling cost, you can see that the word present value is the present value of the dismantling cost should be capitalized and at the same time with an equivalent liability setup. So on the asset side, as we add this particular cost to the cost of the asset, the purchase price of the asset, on the liability side, we have to make an equivalent provision of this particular amount, saying that it is payable, long-term liability, it is payable at the end of the life of the asset, at the time of removal or dismantling of the asset. So this is very important for us to understand when to record and when not to record. Okay. And if it is incurred in the future, if it is likely to be incurred in the future, उसको estimate करके उसका present value निकालेंगे, discount करके उसका present value निकालेंगे. Okay. So example is given. We have solved this example in class. Coming to, since it's a revision lecture, I'll be focusing on the concepts, and then we'll take up some small questions and just to clarify the concept. Okay. Then we come to subsequent expenditure. Subsequent expenditure का मतलब जो expenditure asset खरीदने के बाद जो आएगा, maybe at the end of the year or maybe in the subsequent years. So what do we do with that? Should we add it to the cost of the asset or should we expense it to the profit and loss? Now, as I told you, as you are reading through Kaplan material, there will be a key sign, and this key sign indicates that it is an important point. Subsequent expenditure on property, plant, and equipment should only be treated as part of the cost of the asset if certain conditions are there. First, it enhances the economic benefits provided by the asset. How? Life of the asset is extended. Originally, we had planned that the asset will be lasting for 15 years. Now we come to know that the asset is going to last for 18 years. If I make some changes to the asset, if I add some new part to the asset, it will last for 18 years. Enhance life of the asset. Or expansion of the production capacity of the asset. If the addition of a particular part of the asset, another extension or another small new part is added to the asset, then it will give us more production. Productivity increases. Then in that case, it will be added to the cost of the asset. If it relates to an overhauling or required major inspection of the asset, the cost associated with this should be capitalized, overhauling expenses, and depreciated over the time until the next overhaul or safety inspection. So safety inspections are conducted, let us say, after every 4 years. So whatever expenditure is incurred, that has to be written over a period of 4 years, written off over a period of 4 years. So first you have to capitalize that expenditure, right? Third, it is replacing a component of an asset made up of a number of components. Example, I normally give of aircraft. They have also given aircraft. Body of the aircraft, engine of the aircraft, interiors of the aircraft, tires of the aircraft. All of them have different lifespan. Each one has got a different lifespan. But each one is a component of the major asset that is an aircraft. So we have to add it to the cost of the asset and charge the depreciation, and whatever part is replaced, for example, engine of the aircraft is replaced, then that engine part will be replacing the old engine. So the old engine will be, the cost of that will be removed. The book value of that is going to be removed, and we are going to replace it with the new cost of the engine, right? All other subsequent expenditure should be recognized in the statement of profit or loss because it merely maintains the economic benefits originally expected. That is, example, cost of general repairs and maintenance of the asset to be expensed to the profit and loss account. Okay. Coming to the depreciation part. Depreciation is a gradual, continuous process that takes place over a period of time over the life of the asset. It is a systematic allocation of the depreciable amount. What is a depreciable amount? Depreciable amount, in short, is the numerator of the calculation formula of depreciation. Depreciation is equal to estimated cost of the asset, cost of the asset minus the estimated salvage value of the asset divided by life of the asset. जो numerator में है, that is cost of the asset minus the estimated scrap value or the salvage value. That numerator is the depreciable amount. This is to be written off over its estimated life. Okay. Depreciable amount is the cost of an asset or other amount substituted for cost, less its residual value. Now, what is this other amount substituted for cost? Fair value. Fair value. In that case, that particular value, less its residual value, will be the depreciable amount. Okay. Depreciation must be charged from the date the asset is available for use, not when it is put to use. Building is constructed and ready for use on 1st of September. But it is occupied on 1st of October. So the question comes, do we start depreciation from 1st September or 1st October? It is from 1st September, even though you are using it from 1st October, right? So use of the asset is not relevant. What is relevant is when it is available for use, when it can be used, when it is available for use, not when it is actually put to use. Okay. So this may be earlier than the date that is actually brought into use. For example, as I told you, if I am going for, let us say, the building, the example that I gave you, that it is ready for use, it is constructed, completed, and ready for use on 1st September, then depreciation will be starting from 1st September, September, October, November, December. Okay. So in this way, I will be calculating the depreciation for 4 months. Methods which are the straight line method, reducing balance method, machine hour method. Change from one method. Now, this normally is asked in the case study. This particular part is normally asked in case studies to justify. Can we change from one method to another? No restrictions are there on the changing of method of depreciation. Nobody stops you from changing the method of depreciation. But what they are saying is that a change from one method of providing depreciation to another is permissible only on the grounds that the new method will give a better presentation, a fairer presentation of the results and the financial position. only if there is some advantage that you are getting from the business point of view, that you are able to show a better representation. See, we are doing financial reporting, so it always boils down to reporting procedures, reporting matters, reporting policies. So if it helps us to present and report in a better manner, then it is okay, then it is fine. Second, does not constitute a change of accounting policy. So change in the method of depreciation is not amounting to change in accounting policy. And third, it is a change in the accounting estimate. It is not a change in accounting policy. It is a change in the accounting estimate. So now, once we have done the financial reporting and you are doing now the revision of this, you come to understand that these are the finer points that we have to keep in mind when the reporting on financial statements. Even in actual practice, when you're actually reporting on financial statements, then you have to keep these points in mind, right? So if an asset is made up of a number of components, each separate part should be depreciated over its useful life. So in the case of a aircraft, then we have to ensure that the aircraft का जो components है, these components have to be taken into consideration separately and depreciated separately. Fine. So just a small example here, which I want to discuss with you. Depreciable amount क्या है? Asset costing $100,000 has an expected useful life of 10 years. Purchaser intends to use the asset for 6 years, at which point the residual value is 40,000. So 100,000 minus 40,000, that is the numerator. Cost of the asset minus the estimated salvage value. That will be the depreciable amount of the asset. Okay. Just coming back to this particular point. Review of useful life and residual values. Useful life and residual value should be reviewed at the end of each reporting period and revised if expectations are significantly different from the previous estimates. Useful life and residual values. Why? Because they are estimated values. They are likely to change. Since they are likely to change, we say that they are estimated values. So when I'm charging depreciation on the basis of estimated values, at the end of each year, I have to see whether those estimated salvage value, estimated life of the asset, those values have actually changed, say from 15 years to 8 years, or from 15 years to 18 years. Okay. So like this, we have to check, we have to review. Fine. Overall in cost example I just told you. Coming to another aspect of IAS 16, we have revaluation of non-current assets. IAS 16 allows a choice of accounting treatment for property, plant and equipment. We have the cost model and we have the revaluation model. These are the two models which are available for us. Okay, as per the IAS 16 accounting standard. The cost model is nothing, it's very simple. It's just your cost of the asset minus the residual value of the, minus the depreciation. Like we normally do. Normally we follow the cost method, the cost model. So it is the cost of the asset as we just calculated. That is the purchase price plus all the incidental expenses incurred for bringing the asset into use, putting it into use, putting it into workable condition at our factory. And any expenditure that is incurred for overhauling the cost of the asset, subsequent expenditure, all that is added. So that minus the depreciation, the accumulated depreciation, that is the cost. What is the revaluation model? Revaluation model may be carried. The plant and equipment should be carried at the revalued amount, less, again, less any subsequent accumulated depreciation. So if you have revalued the asset, if you have revalued the property, plant and equipment, if you have revalued the asset, then the revalued value less the subsequent accumulated depreciation. If the revaluation alternative is adopted, two conditions must be complied with. Guys, just remember, ये याद रखना कि जब भी मैं financial reporting की बात करूंगा, I am always going to stress this point. Whether it is first condition and the second condition, or first condition or second condition. Since it is first condition and second condition, both have to be complied with. If it is first condition or a second condition, one of them needs to be complied. So you have to be careful with the wordings. यहाँ पर clearly specify किया है कि both the conditions must be complied. Okay, so what are the two conditions? Condition number one, revaluations must subsequently be made with sufficient regularity to ensure that the carrying amount does not differ materially from the fair value at each reporting date. Okay, so what does it mean? When you are doing revaluation of an asset, at the end of each year, you need to find out what is the revalued figure, or at regular intervals, sufficient regularity, regular intervals, what is the fair value of the asset. Okay. Second, when an item of property, plant, and equipment is revalued, the entire class of assets to which the item belongs to must be revalued. Which means that if you are revaluing building, one building will not be revalued. All the buildings will be revalued. एक building से काम नहीं चलेगा. Entire class of assets will be revalued. Okay. What is the accounting for revaluation? Very important from exam point of view. 3 steps are there. Okay. First, restate the assets cost to the new valuation. समझो 400,000 you have paid for the asset. That is the cost of the asset. Now it is going to be revalued to 500,000. So first change that figure from 400 to 500. So increase the value of the asset by 100,000 to debit asset 100,000. Eliminate any existing accumulated depreciation for the asset. Accumulated depreciation normally credit होता है, तो इसको eliminate करने के लिए debit करना पड़ेगा. So I will be debiting accumulated depreciation account. Debit the increase in the value of the asset to the asset account. Debit the accumulated depreciation to cancel the older depreciation, and then show the total increase that has taken place in OCI, other comprehensive income, at the foot of the statement of profit or loss, that is at the end after profit and loss account. This would then be taken to the revaluation surplus account of the asset, and it will be a part of the OCI in your statement of changes in equity. Okay, so you have debit non-current assets with the increase in the cost, revalued amount minus cost, 500,000 minus 400,000, 100,000. Debit the accumulated depreciation, whatever is the amount of accumulated depreciation that you debit. Iska total goes to the revaluation surplus account in OCI, other comprehensive income. Okay? Recognizing revaluation gains and losses. Now, this paragraph, this particular part is absolutely important for you. Absolutely important for you, because you can be asked, you can be tested on this in MCQs as well as in the case studies, right? So, starting with what is important here, let us take that first paragraph. Revaluation gains are recorded as a component of OCI, either within the statement of profit or loss and OCI, or in a separate statement. This gain is then carried on to a revaluation surplus within the equity. This revaluation surplus is a capital reserve and is therefore not permitted to be distributed to the shareholders. Dividend cannot be paid out of this particular profit. Okay, dividend cannot be paid out of this particular profit, revaluation surplus account, because it's a capital profit. You cannot pay dividend out of capital profits. You can pay dividend only out of revenue profits, that is retained earnings. ये एक बात है, but more important than that is the second part. If you see here, they have said revaluation losses which represent impairment of the asset value are recognized in the statement of profit or loss. अगर revalue करते समय loss दिखा, there is a loss, then in that case, that loss will be transferred to profit and loss account, SOPL, not in OCI, but there is a provision here. When a revaluation loss arises on a previously revalued asset, तो पहली बार जब revaluation किया, profit आया, that profit has gone to OCI, and then subsequently जब revaluation किया तभी loss आया, revaluation का loss आया. In that case, okay, in that case, it should be deducted first against the previous revaluation gain and can therefore be taken to the OCI income in that particular year. So समझो, first when you revalued the asset, you got a revaluation gain of $8,000. Subsequently जब revalue किया तो 6,000 का loss आया. So that 6,000 ka loss will be adjusted against the OCI revaluation gain of 8,000. And that OCI will be reduced to 8 minus 6, 2,000. So this is to be done when you find that first you had a revaluation gain and subsequently you are having a revaluation loss. अगर 8,000 revaluation gain है पहले और बाद में रिवैल्यूएशन लॉस आ गया 6,000, सो 8 minus 6 करने के बाद 2,000 रिवैल्यूएशन गेन विल कंटिन्यू इन द रिवैल्यूएशन सरप्लस. नाउ द सेकंड थिंग दैट वी हैव टू नोटिस दैट सपोज पहले जब रिवैल्यूएशन किया तो 8,000 का गेन आया, सब्सिक्वेंटली जब रिवैल्यू किया तो 10,000 का लॉस आया. लॉस इज 10,000. First revaluation gain is only 8,000. So in that case, I can adjust the loss of only 8,000 against this revaluation gain of 8,000. उसके बाद भी 2,000 का loss is still there. It is 10,000 loss. So 10,000 में से 8,000 will be adjusted against the previous revaluation gain which is there in the OCI. बाकी का जो 2,000 loss है, that will go to the SOP. Clear? So this particular thing, any excess impairment will then be recorded as an impairment expense in the statement of profit or loss. तो अगर पहले लॉस आता है तो वो लॉस जाएगा सीधा एसओपीएल में, राइट? अगर पहले प्रॉफिट आता है दैट विल गो टू ओसीआई. सब्सिक्वेंटली उसके बाद एक लॉस आता है तो टू द एक्सटेंट दैट देयर इज अ प्रॉफिट, जितना भी प्रॉफिट है उतना प्रॉफिट में से ये लॉस पहले कम करेंगे, और लॉस अगर उससे ज्यादा है तो दैट बैलेंस फिगर विल गो टू एसओपीएल. ठीक है? We'll take up short questions on this at a later stage. Let me complete all the points that I need to discuss with you. Then next one is depreciation of revalued assets. Depreciation अलग से किया, revaluation अलग से किया. Now revaluation के बाद जो depreciation आएगी, once an asset has been revalued, the following treatment is required. Number one, depreciation must be charged based on valuation less residual value. मतलब revalued figure जो है वो लेके minus the residual value, if any, over the remaining useful life of the asset. Look at the words over here, very important. Remaining useful life, not the original useful life. समझो after 2 years or after 3 years, life of the asset say is 10 years. After 3 years, you have revalued the asset, then depreciation you are charging. So depreciation will be charged on the revalued figure for the remaining 7 years. Out of 10 years, 3 years are complete. So remaining 7 years, remaining useful life of the asset, that is remaining 7 years. The whole charge must go to the statement of profit or loss. मतलब जो भी depreciation है, on the revalued figure, that will go to statement of profit or loss. Now, third point is important. Look at this. I like these points, because it brings out something new in the normal procedure of recording or writing or charging of depreciation, right? So let us look at the point. An annual reserves transfer may be made from revaluation surplus to retained earnings for the additional depreciation charged on the revalued amount compared to the cost. This permitted treatment under IAS 16 is to address the imbalance between a non-distributable gain held in revaluation surplus, and the reduction in the retained earnings due to the increased depreciation charge. समझो, before the revaluation, the depreciation was 10,000. After the revaluation, the depreciation increased to 13,000. So accounting standard says कि रिवैल्यू करने से डेप्रिसिएशन बढ़ा, 3,000 से डेप्रिसिएशन बढ़ा फ्रॉम 10,000 टू 13,000. सो प्रॉफिट हैज कम डाउन. किसका प्रॉफिट? शेयर होल्डर का प्रॉफिट. शेयर होल्डर का प्रॉफिट कम हो गया. तो शेयर होल्डर का प्रॉफिट कम हो गया, किधर गया? रिवैल्यूएशन सरप्लस में गया. कैन वी डिस्ट्रीब्यूट दैट प्रॉफिट टू शेयर होल्डर्स एज डिविडेंड? यू सेड नो. अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड सेज नो, यू कांट. इट्स कैपिटल प्रॉफिट. तो शेयर होल्डर का प्रॉफिट कम हो गया बिकॉज नॉट बिकॉज कंपनी हैज अर्नड लेस प्रॉफिट, बट बिकॉज यू हैव रिवैल्यूड द एसेट. ऑन एन रिवैल्यूएशन, more depreciation has been charged. So that additional depreciation will now be adjusted and transferred to maintain that balance. It is going to be transferred from the revaluation surplus to retained earnings, thereby making that amount free and available for distribution to shareholders as dividend. So accounting standard says injustice must not be done to the shareholders. Injustice must not be done to the shareholders. उनका जो प्रॉफिट कम हुआ है इन द प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस अकाउंट बिकॉज ऑफ एक्सेस डेप्रिसिएशन ऑफ 3,000, दे आर नॉट रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर. रिवैल्यूएशन ऑफ एसेट हो गया है, तो जो एक्सेस डेप्रिसिएशन है 3,000 का बिकॉज ऑफ रिवैल्यूएशन, दैट विल नाउ बी अवेलेबल. तो उसका एक सेकंड होता है कि रिवैल्यूएशन सरप्लस से हम लोग उसको रिलीज करके फ्री प्रॉफिट करके उसको रिटेन अर्निंग्स में डालते हैं. Right? This permitted treatment under it is not compulsory. Permitted treatment under IAS 16 is to address the imbalance between non-distributable gain held in revaluation surplus and the reduction in the retained earnings due to the increased depreciation charge. Okay, so this transfer has to take place. Now, this transfer will take place only if it is the policy of the company to make such a transfer. But if the company does not have a policy, or अगर problem में specify किया है कि company does not have a policy of transferring to retained earnings out of revaluation surplus, then it will not happen. Okay, that is why it is said this permitted treatment under IAS 16. That means IAS 16 allows. It is not making it compulsory. It allows, but it is not making it compulsory, right? I suppose all these points are clear with you. Coming to disposal of revalued non-current assets. Again, another important aspect. Asset को revalue किया, उसको depreciate किया. Revalue करते समय gain OCI में गया, loss SOPL में गया. अगर पहले गेन और बाद में लॉस आया तो लॉस को प्रॉफिट के सामने एडजस्ट किया फ्रॉम OCI. बैलेंस वाज ट्रांसफर्ड, द सरप्लस वाज ट्रांसफर्ड टू SOPL. देन वी सेड दैट डेप्रिसिएशन अगर चार्ज करना है तो रिवैल्यूड एसेट के ऊपर, रिवैल्यूड एसेट रिवैल्यूड फिगर के ऊपर डेप्रिसिएशन चार्ज करेंगे, राइट? एंड सिंस वी आर चार्जिंग डेप्रिसिएशन on the basis of the revalued figures, it will be for the remaining useful life of the asset. अभी सवाल ये है कि अगर revalued asset को dispose करने का है, सेल करने का है, then what are the conditions? Two steps. Step number one, it should be accounted for in the statement of profit or loss of the period in which the disposal occurs. So whenever you are selling off a revalued asset, the profit or loss on the disposal, profit ho ya loss ho, on the sale of the asset, on the disposal of a revalued non-current asset, that should be shown in the SOPL. Second point, any balance in the revaluation surplus of that particular asset, only of that particular asset, which is revalued and now being sold, should be now made free. तो free कैसे करते हैं? Transfer from revaluation surplus to retained earnings, right? So transfer from revaluation surplus to retained earnings. So we make this free. Fine. So there is no balance in the revaluation surplus after the asset is sold. जब तक asset है वो revaluation surplus का balance रहेगा. जैसे वो asset बेच दिया, it is out of our control, the revaluation surplus is no longer required, because the revaluation surplus cannot be utilized. One more point, the revaluation surplus cannot be utilized to adjust the revaluation loss of any other asset. वो बेकार पड़ा रहेगा. We can't use it for distribution as dividend. We can't use the revaluation surplus of one asset for adjustment of another asset. So in that case, what do we do? इसे बंद करो, इसको रिलीज करो इसको. So that revaluation surplus which is no longer required, it is released. It is released by transferring it to retained earnings. Right? So very important point. Very good point for discussion in the examination. So up till now we have discussed all the important provisions of IAS 16. Now we will be shifting to questions which are, or topics which are, you can say, not really IAS 16, but the subsequent topics which are connected to this particular asset, connected to property, plant and equipment, right? So we will come back and take up small questions based on IAS 16 topics, and then we'll continue with the revision of IAS 23, IAS 40 and so on, right? Till then, see you. Let us now take IAS 23, that is the transaction of borrowing costs, that is interest on loans taken for the construction of an asset. So let us come to the concept of IAS 23. Let's go back. So here we have IAS 23, that is treatment of borrowed cost. Borrowing cost is nothing but the interest that is paid on the loan that is taken for the construction of an asset, which is, as of now, we are talking about IAS 16 type of asset. That is property, plant and equipment, which has been used for the business, which is purchased for the purpose of the business to be used in the business. So what they are saying is that IAS 23 regulates the extent to which entities are allowed to capitalize borrowing costs incurred on the money borrowed to finance the acquisition of certain assets. Borrowing costs must be capitalized as part of the cost of an asset if the asset is a qualifying asset. So only if the asset is a qualifying asset. Now, what is a qualifying asset? Qualifying asset is an asset that takes a substantial period of time for its construction to get ready for its intended use or for sale. Normally, we take the example of construction of property, construction of building. So an asset which takes a considerable or substantial period of time, construction of building, office building or corporate office you want to construct, that takes about 8 months. So that 8 months is your substantial period of time for which the asset takes to get ready for its intended use. That is a qualifying asset. Commencement of capitalization. When to start capitalization? IAS 23 states that capitalization of borrowing cost should commence when all of the following conditions. Look at this word. Nice little word. All of the following conditions are met. The first condition plus second condition plus third condition, all three have to be met. Even if one condition is not met, you cannot capitalize the interest, right? First, expenditure for the asset is being incurred. Meaning what? meaning that you are still in the process of construction of the asset. You are spending money. You are paying wages to workers to construct the asset. You are purchasing raw materials for the construction of the asset. You are incurring overheads and paying the overheads for the construction of the asset. That is expenditure incurred for the asset. It's still being incurred. Second, borrowing costs are being incurred. At the same time, as you are incurring the cost for construction of the asset, on the other hand, you are paying interest on the loan that you have taken, right? So both are being paid. This is being paid, this is also being paid. Cost is incurred for construction, तो काम चालू है. इसका मतलब ये है कि काम चालू है. और सेकंड जो है वो इंटरेस्ट, इंटरेस्ट भी चालू है. इंटरेस्ट ऑन द लोन टेकन फॉर द कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ दिस, वो भी चालू है. दोनों साइमल्टेनियसली होना चाहिए. थर्ड, activities that are necessary to prepare the asset for its intended use or sale are in progress. Preparing the asset, you are incurring expenditure first. That expenditure must be incurred for preparing or constructing the asset for the intended use, right? So all these three conditions have to be satisfied to start capitalizing the interest on your loans taken for the construction of the asset. Rate of interest to be taken. Where funds are borrowed specifically to acquire a qualifying asset, borrowing costs which may be capitalized or those actually incurred, less any investment income on this temporary investment of the borrowings during the capitalization period. Or if not, where the funds are taken from general borrowings, the weighted average cost of general borrowings is taken, where you take the total interest that is paid upon the total loan that you are having, and that will give you the weighted average rate of interest. Okay. Cessation of capitalization. When will you stop the capitalization? When you start the capitalization, I have told. When you stop the capitalization, capitalization stops when either substantially all the activities necessary to prepare the qualifying asset for its intended use or sale are complete. That means all activities for the construction of the asset have been completed. Okay. Word is either. That means it is either the first condition or the second condition. So either all the activities which are incurred or going on for the construction of that qualifying asset have stopped, have come to an end, or the construction is suspended, temporarily stopped. Example, they have given industrial disputes. I can give you more examples. Workers have gone on leave because of some festival, or raw materials are not available, or there is a heavy rainfall, and as a result of that, the construction activity cannot take place. Temporarily suspended, temporarily stopped. So there is cessation of capitalization, right? So that is your IAS 23. When to start, when to stop, they have given to you. Fine. So we will end this session here and then come back with some numerical questions which we will solve and then take up IAS 20 and IAS 40. Okay. Thank you. See you back again very soon.